Right now we're standing in front of Nishi-Ogikubo station, and this is where I'm doing my field work. And we start in front of the train station because Tokyo, and this part of Tokyo, is really a city built around the train lines, and this station opened in 1923. One of the things that really signifies residential life in Tokyo are these little vegetable shops, these yaoya. But this one here is a very special one because a lot of restaurateurs will buy their vegetables here. It has a great selection. And this is one of the places I recently interviewed, and it represents two phenomena here that don't usually go hand in hand. One is the local Chinese restaurant, the machichuka, which is one of the most common genres of restaurants in Tokyo and is usually associated with working class culture. But this guy has managed to get himself on the Michelin guidebook by offering a kind of scaled up version of Chinese cuisine. So we're walking up the street, and this is another one of my hangouts. Again, this is a place that was also part of the neighborhood culture, and this is a small coffee shop. And Tokyo is full of these little tiny coffee shops in which you get a master who makes roasts his own beans, grinds his own beans, serves the coffee. This place has been around since the early 1970s under the ownership of this one coffee maker, and his son is also now working there. The new thing in town, and it's not unique to Nishi-Ogikubo, actually it's all over Tokyo and indeed all over Japan, is the vast number of Nepali-owned restaurants. So just as the machichuka, the little Chinese restaurant, was kind of the working class food of the whole 20th century in Tokyo, I think the working class food of the 21st century in Tokyo is going to be Indian and Nepali. As we go down the street, you also then find a large number of small shops selling food. And these are often high-quality shops selling high-quality produce, and this is a meat shop. This is a famous meat shop on the street, and you can see a lot of elderly people buying their food here. But don't be fooled. This is not low-end, food, but usually fine meats, wagyu, steak, and things like that. And a lot of people will buy their special meat here. So you can see here as we are heading towards the south side of the station, the elevated train tracks that I just talked about. So this is where they moved up the Chuo line. Now, Chuo line is one of the oldest train tracks in all of the oldest train lines. So as you go down the street, you see these guys now advertising these cheap izakaya. And this is the new trend in Japan. It's really cheap chain shops. These izakaya. These are like little restaurants, including, you can see behind it, Jonathan's. This is a chain restaurant. These chain restaurants are really the mainstay of the young people in Japan, the families in Japan. This is food that's often industrially made in industrial kitchens. So we moved down the street, and we've just gotten to the most famous restaurant in the whole neighborhood. And the most famous restaurant in Nishi-Ogikubo is actually a French restaurant called Kok Asia. And this was a small cafe run by a student from Waseda who actually had inherited this business. It was a clothing business, and decided to run a cafe. And the lady that worked there knew something about French cooking. So in the immediate post-war period, this was an unusual French cafe. I think it opened in 1947. That called itself the Kokeshi no Kai. And kokeshi are these little dolls, these little Japanese dolls. And they named the Kokeshi no Kai after the little dolls, and here in this photo you can see a whole collection of these little dolls that Kok Asia has collected. And after the cultural salon was going on for a while, they changed the name of the restaurant actually to match this the name of the cultural group that met there, which more or less ended by the 1970s. So now it's a very prim and proper bourgeois place, a place of nostalgia. You go there to celebrate your birthday. So as you go around the neighborhood, you see here that Tokyo is a city of alleyways. It's a city of tiny streets. And this is I don't think Nishi-Ogikubo is peculiar in this regard, but this is one of the alley streets that people have colonized as a space of small businesses. But there's also down the street one of my favorite restaurants in the neighborhood, which is Rahi. It's a Pakistani restaurant run by a migrant, and this is another story we're telling in this webpage that I'm running called Nishi-Ogiology, which is really about how migrant entrepreneurs are making are really keeping alive these urban spaces in Tokyo. This is another restaurant. Again, I think picking up more on the theme set by Kok Asia, which is that this is a space of sort of classy but reasonably cheap European-style food. And there's a nickname for this neighborhood. They call it the Bistro Battleground because there's so many bistros in the right around the station. Now, the other place down the street is also a migrant-run restaurant, and this is run by a couple who, she's a Japanese woman who spent time in Los Angeles, went there and discovered the American deli, and decided, oh wow, I want to do this. This is a really cool thing, this Los Angeles-style deli. And then she met this African-American guy from Staten Island who's lived in Japan now for 35 years, came as a Marine. And they run this place together. It's called Kiku. And it's an American-style deli with a lot of Japanese touches, African touches, Middle Eastern touches, everything, really. So as you walk down the south side of the station, you get into the area that really is developed actually after the war. The south end of the station opened up in the 1930s, and only after the war did you get the opening up of an old black market in this neighborhood, and that black market is still there and is popular as a drinking neighborhood. It used to be a drinking neighborhood, and it's still a drinking neighborhood. But one of my real interests in this research is the changing nature of drinking culture. So in the old days, whereas that black market would have been filled with snack bars, what we call snack bars, which are really like hostess bars, where you have a mama-san who serves drinks to the customers and chit-chats with them. This is one of the spots that I've written about in Nishi-Ogikubo, and I guess you could say if you want to have an authentic drinking izakaya experience, you head to Choro. Choro is run by another former salaryman who decided he didn't have any other choice but to run a restaurant, and he runs it together with his wife, and he's a good cook, and it's a real, genuine hole in the wall. And you get in there, the menu is barely legible, the place looks grotty, but he cooks great food at a gourmet quality. There he is. He's cooking up one of his famous tamago yaki, which is actually made with a broth. And it's cooked in broth, and it's a very, very delicious omelet. And he's a good cook. He's a little bit he has a rough personality until late at night when he's had a few sips on the shochu. Usually lubricates him a bit. So as you go down the street, you see a lot of people hanging out. Here we are going down the street. The place to the right of us is run by a Korean mother and daughter. She got tired of her white-collar job, decided to run a Korean restaurant. Place on the left is the only Uzbeki wine bar in the world outside of Uzbekistan, also run by a Japanese couple. Their daughter runs a little restaurant down the street. The next place down is run by a Taiwanese lady. That's it right there, Akai Hana. She's retired, so there we are at a place called Miruchi. Now Miruchi is an interesting story as well. So Miruchi is really a Bangladeshi bar, and there's a guy that just came into the picture, literally, and is sharing a drink with us that we bought for him.